Hey everyone, we have Zeb Smathers with us. He's the mayor of the community of Canton, North Carolina. What do people need to understand about what has happened to your town?
Well, first off, we're still here. And thank you
Yeah.
for having me. And I think that's so important for so many people and communities across the U.S. to know. We've all been through a lot the last several years, but probably no place more than Canton. I mean, between COVID in 2021, we had a flood that was similar to this one. We then lost our paper mill, 1,100 jobs lost just within months unexpectedly. And here we are now with a flood that's worse. I joke, I keep my humor with me. We're slowly working our way through the book of Revelations, it seems. We even had earthquakes after the mill closed. We had earthquakes, but we're still here and we're finding a way. And even facing Hurricane Helene, where it brought more water than 21, more water than we've ever seen. We learned a lot of lessons that helped make this something a lot more manageable. The idea that my town suffered again apocalyptic destruction, and we have the water on, we have electricity on, we have businesses opening back up. You have to, simply learn lessons from these storms. But one thing that's very challenging, back in 21, they said this was a once in a lifetime storm.
Hmm.
We made it 3 years. The idea that a town 3,000 feet above sea level, roughly, in the mountains of North Carolina, hundreds of miles away from the coasts, has to monitor forecasts as if Canton was 30 feet above sea level, says a lot. So we have to now realize the game has changed. I can't go back to businesses this go around with the expectation they're opening back up because I mean that's just political fluff. I'll support them whatever they do, but again, we had 28 feet of water in our town. The last flood in '04 was 23. So you can prepare all you want to, but you can only do so much when there's 28 feet of water in your downtown.
What do you think going forward can be done to kind of mitigate in the future? I mean, do you build things higher? Is there anything that can be done to change the dynamic so that it just doesn't happen over again?
Well, first off, there's a mindset. There's a mindset that that things have changed. Again, I don't want to get into the politics of what got us here. I think the leadership requires you have to make decisions for the world that is, not the world that you want. So first off, it's a mindset. Second off, it is the ability to mitigate where you can, especially with new construction. Even in the mountains. I mean, the idea that we've increased so many houses that are being built on the mountains that channels more water into our riverbeds. So I think you've got to look at overall every aspect of it. How and what do you build? But also at the same time, some of these buildings, they've been here forever. You can't put them on stilts, but they're also important. They have a lot of small businesses, so you find ways of just planning. So if you know a storm is coming, you help them get their inventory out, and then get the inventory back in. I mean, no one likes to move, but one day moving and one day moving back is worth a lot of money, and it may be the difference that store closing. And also communication. The more communication you have with emergency management, with your elected officials, and you have to demand bipartisanship. We've seen it so many times through our crises. It's not been a Democrat or a Republican assistance. It's been a united front, and I think I want that to be one of our legacies, because especially in these divided times, once you see that, you see people working together. Yes, there's a time for politics, but you don't have to accept anything less than that. You can demand one's best and leadership, and you'll get to the politics later. And I think that's something that many Americans find refreshing now. It doesn't surprise me. That's how we always sort of worked out here in the mountains. But the rest of the country needs to see that also.
Talk a little bit about what you did learn from last time. So, for example, were you able to, first of all, I think experience teaches, right? I mean, people in your town take this kind of stuff seriously because they've lived it before. Now they've lived it twice and possibly three times. So, what reaction did you have from them, like when you said, hey, you might want to get your stuff out of here?
Well, I think a lot of people did listen to us this time, because it just builds experience and legitimacy. I wish more would have, but no one was expecting this kind of storm.
Sure.
But we were sort of the ones saying, "Hey, look, we've been through this before. This is eerily similar to what we went through." There was a precursor storm just the night before that dumped a lot of water, so everything was there. But again, when you live in the mountains of North Carolina, you do not expect a hurricane to do as much damage. But my warning is to everyone listening: if your town, community, city, if you've not been affected by a weather event, especially flooding, I plead with you, please consider the possibility. If a town like Canton, uh, within 3 years, can go through this from a hurricane, there's not many other places that you're not going to be affected by a tornado, hurricane, blizzard, etc. And it's again, this is the world it seems we live in. I don't like it, but I've got to live in it and find a way.
How have you felt? We've had so much stuff happening on social media, not necessarily about your community, but about so many others with, crazy concoctions of conspiracy theories, people creating all this angst in people where they're thinking or maybe being less likely to go after aid and sign up for funds from FEMA because they're hearing, oh, they might want my land. Oh, they might be building mines. Oh, this is a land grab or other and various and sundry rumors. How concerned are you about that? Because, South Carolinians are entitled to these monies, and they are not taking your land. But how do you beat back against the rumor mills out there?
Well, it's heartbreaking, some of the stuff that I've witnessed. I've even got a few phone calls of the rumor mill saying that I died in the river, and I'm not making that up. So some of the misrepresentations even put me 6 feet under. So I have seen so many heartbreaking things that are taking advantage of people at their lowest point and when they're scared. Now, one side I worry about, and we saw this 3 years ago, sometimes this is the setup before the scam. So there are people saying, don't trust your elected officials. Don't trust these organizations. Don't trust this, but you can trust us. And then the next part of that conversation happens. I'm really worried about elderly being taken advantage of, people in low income areas where a lot of times these storms affect, in greater capacity. I worry about the scams as being part of the misrepresentation. Also, I find it cowardly that many of the people are way beyond nowhere near West North Carolina, and they're taking pot shots, they're making assumptions, they're saying this, and they're not here. If you are on the ground in West North Carolina, you are seeing not just the best of this region, but the best of America. And you're not seeing people ask for voter ID cards. You're seeing neighbors helping neighbors. You're seeing sacrifice, as we should be doing. Because there are people, I think it's now up to 88 or 92 people have lost their life. At the end of the day, we have an obligation to live up to a standard of respect for the ones that have lost everything, their homes and their loved ones. So again, if you're peddling this information and deep down it's not true, how you can look yourself in the mirror, look your family in the mirror, or especially look some of these people who've lost everything and need the help and need that access and love, man, you are a sick individual because it's not true and you're not here. And again, in 2021, it took weeks for us to get our FEMA declaration from the White House. I was out there, as mad as I could be. We watched in just a few weeks ago, our cell phones disappeared for 4 or 5 days. A complete letdown communication, which I also think helped spread the misinformation, because even though there were services here from churches to state and local help, we couldn't tell anybody because we couldn't communicate. But if there was things going on in my community, like some of the rumors have suggested, I promise you, I'd be on your show. I'd have every microphone from every church pulpit, you name it. But it's not the truth. The day after I saw FEMA on the ground doing search and rescue, I talked to them. I said, thank you. They were young men and women. They were here to help. They are working with our emergency management people to search and find people and rescue people. They're here. To say that they're not and they're not helping us, or it's just there's really the words run out. It just takes away from everything and all the sacrifices of everybody because it's simply not true.
There's also a lot of conjecture and speculation about how many people have truly passed away in this situation. And I've been trying to figure out, I mean, is some of it just that there's maybe an information vacuum? In other words, that, a lot of the counting and accounting for the loss of life has been turned over to the state medical examiner's office. And you have been through this in your community before, so you may be able to speak to this. Trying to maintain dignity for people in this process, might that be what is delaying openness with the information? In other words, we have seen steel beams torn apart by these floodwaters. We know that human beings were in those floodwaters. They are not going to necessarily be, unfortunately, intact. And so the medical examiner's office has to kind of put together through, I guess, DNA, right? Who is who and what is what, and then finally not only match the remains of people to each other, but then also match to families to tell them, yes, your loved one is gone. But that's got to take a lot of time, right?
It does. And I know all of us, myself included, we're obsessed with information. We want to know the what, the when, the where, the how. And so, again, we pay attention. Oh, this is how many lives were lost today. This is how much damage. I mean, we're just obsessed with information. Okay, guilty as charged.
Sure.
But let us start at the basic humanity of this. 88 people, let's just use that number, have lost their lives of this. That means there's 88 tables of family members that have an empty chair. That means there's going to be 88 Christmases coming up with a missing loved one. Can we not start at a basic point of humanity to understand that every one of these people who lost their life, no matter their age, their background, their race, that was someone's mother, father, brother, sister, co-worker. We cannot let ourselves become so cold or so obsessed with finding out information that we forget the basic humanity. Because again, step back and think, what if it was your loved one? Would you not want the respect and dignity to find the answers and make sure? I mean, but again, I think it's up to us to demand that from people. Just like to demand better from our politics, we need to demand better from each other. Just because you can say something doesn't mean you should. There still is a place for mercy and basic humanity in this, and that's the correct answer. The alternative is, are we going to live in a society that just promotes the need to feed, our needs and the selfishness that drives that? Let these people in these communities pick up the pieces, because for many of them, there's not many pieces left. Can we not give them a moment to heal and understand? Just much like in COVID, people can have all their theories about all sorts of things. We lost a lot of mothers and sisters and brothers and fathers to COVID, just like we are here. Let's start there, and then we can talk about everything else.
Yeah. Do you think it would help, though, for officials to maybe in some gentle way explain that is what is going on right now? They're trying to get this information basically verified.
I think so, and I think some of us are doing that, especially in the communities that lost more lives. I know in Haywood County, where Canton is, we've lost 5. But again, you went 5 days without the ability to communicate by cell phone. So that means no postings on social media, no text, no way to get the information out there. But also, I think that's where some of this misrepresentation comes from, where we can say it, but if you're believing what we're saying is not true, or it's not legitimate, or it's part of some conspiracy theory, I could tell you the winning lotto numbers, and it's not going to matter. And so again, guys, I believe a lot of times our job is just to use our common sense. If it sounds suspicious, ask, verify, think for yourself. Don't depend on anybody. If it comes from me, fact check it. Ask the questions. That's why journalism is so important. I mean, it is not just trust people what they say, because I think a lot of people online, they're saying these things that are just nonsense, and no one's holding their feet to the fire. And again, we can try, but the best people to question that are the ones consuming it and just call it out for what it is. And so that doesn't sound right to me. That doesn't make sense. I know my community better than that, and I know, my local county commissioner, if they say we've lost 5 more people today, that he's telling us the truth. So again, trust your gut, use your common sense, and think for yourself. That in itself is a shield to bad information.
What's your hope going forward of what can happen for the region? Like, I mean, you've seen Canton build back, and you know the time it takes. Maybe you have an encouraging message for the region since you have walked the walk before.
It's a couple things. One, it's worth fighting for. I knew I was going to struggle with that question right when this happened, because I knew it was coming. Is what's the alternative? Do we abandon the place we call home? Do we give up on our loved ones and our restaurants and our schools, the things that made us who we are? We're so quick to move on to what's next. We forget about the people and places that made us who we are. And this is home. I've been all over the world. I went to Duke undergrad, law school at Carolina, but I came home. And other than the words "I love you," the most important word in the English language, I think, is the word home. A place that you can call your own, you can catch your breath, you can love and have good times, but also the hard times. And home, and wherever you may call it, is worth fighting for. But so are the people, your culture, your traditions. So there was a Western North Carolina that existed before this, and there's one after. And I think anyone who goes to a natural disaster, there's people in Florida right now. The Florida they're waking up to now is much different than it was a few days ago. But it's worth building back and continuing the story of what matters. Don't abandon it. Don't give up on it. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but the fight is worth having. And I think the other part of it is the ones of us that have come through this before, especially in these areas. Many of these communities, especially in the mountains, they don't have mayors. They don't have city limit signs, but they matter just as important as anybody else. So when we're looking at a recovery, some of us have to advocate and make sure people realize that no matter what cove or community or city you call home, you have a seat at the table. It's because your home is where you make it. And so many great people have made West North Carolina home, and we've all been affected somehow, some more than others. But we're all entitled to the respect and the recovery that we deserve.
Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for your time. We're wishing you the best. And I know there's little things, so many people are coming up there from the upstate, I know, and volunteering. I keep seeing so many of my friends posting. And now they're selling, T-shirts and sweatshirts and all kinds of things you can do to support North Carolina Strong and Western North Carolina Strong and Holler Strong. And I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, it really is. It is heartwarming. And do you have a favorite as we go? Do you have a favorite heartwarming moment that just will never leave your mind?
Man, this one's been a little bit difficult because it's sort of deja vu all over you. But I do want to speak to our friends in South Carolina. Just as we talk about one mountain family, we think this is one Carolina family. I mean,
Agreed.
The barbecue sauces may be different, but I think any of us that have the blessing to call Carolina home, and I have so many memories, in Greenville, especially Charleston and Kiowa and the coast, because it's quicker for us to go to the beach going to Charleston than it is North Carolina. And traveling down I-26 and just, so many people along the way. And I think what you're seeing is sort of a Carolina family that if you're lucky enough to call the Carolinas home, there's something that's part of your DNA and it's special. But I think for me personally, it's not a lot. comment, but I think it's something important because one thing I worry about is I'm never going to be able to write enough thank you cards. I'm never going to be able to tell everyone thank you for all the people who drop water off or said a prayer. But no, it matters. But it is something to be said, and I saw this in the mill closing. I'm seeing it now. When you're in a community and you're around people that have lost their homes, their jobs, and everything, and they have the audacity to come up to you and want to pray with you and give you support after they've lost everything, that's what we're fighting for. That's why we keep going. When you have that quality of people that even in their lowest, darkest moments still have enough joy and belief to say, we're praying for you and we're in this together and we're going to make it, from someone who, my sister lost her home. I didn't lose my home. That is grit and that is grace. And those are two words I keep coming back to through all of this. The people of West North Carolina, the amount of grit and grace they have shown is just remarkable. It's not surprising. I stand some people say, oh, it's unbelievable. It's not believable. If you live in places like we do, we know their quality, but it's nice the rest of the nation is seeing these people and seeing that grit and grace shine through once again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank y'all.